Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, education lovers. Welcome to the program. So excited to have you with us on this week's installment of Big Ideas in Education. I'm Ryan Kairalla. We're happy to be joined on the show this week by Nate Moore, the Director of Technology at the Kearsley Community Schools in Flint, Michigan. Recently, our guest has spearheaded his school district's technology initiatives and has played a direct role in updating classrooms and supporting teachers leading up to the new school year. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting themrmoore.com. That's TheMrMoore.com. Nate, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Ryan, glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
I am thrilled to have provided this opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity to interview you, because I feel like this has got to be a tough time to get on the schedule of somebody like you, because I know this time of year is busy for anyone in your role. Anybody that's in the role of managing technology for a school district, the start of the school year must be a mad dash. I bet you are just going minute by minute, just always moving around, trying to get new tech into your school's classrooms.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, quite honestly, teachers, summer, for teachers and, other folks inside the school, the summertime is traditionally, and I'm a former teacher, right? So I can speak this. I know what this is like. Typically you get to June, you've got 2-3 months where you're still doing school stuff, you're still prepping for the next school year, but it's kind of winding down. The technology side, we're full blast. And we've been that way really since, probably May or June. And in the summertime, we're really trying to not just provide the service of making, your kind of everyday average technology calls throughout the district, but you're also looking down the road. And so you're really trying to deploy new tech, repair old tech, infrastructure, content filter, tech tools for teachers and staff. So absolutely, you're spot on. It is a busy time of year. My phone is on stun right now, so you have my complete attention. And but I'm excited to be here today.
I'm already afraid of how many missed calls you're going to have when you turn your phone back on after this interview. So at the risk of grossly oversimplifying your career trajectory, what I'm hearing is that you started out as a classroom teacher and have now transitioned into this technology support role for your school district. And I'd love to hear about how your role as a teacher has helped you in your new role. Does the fact that you have been in the trenches before, that you have the teacher bona fides, does that help you communicate to your teachers and let them know, hey, I know what you're going through, I know what your day-to-day is like, and so when I recommend technology for you, I know it's actually going to put points on the board for you and not just be something that you're never going to use?
Oh, absolutely. I was always, this fall, the start of my 25th year, and I'm almost afraid to say that. It's flown by.
Whoa. Congratulations.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I've worn a lot of hats. I never saw myself, as a former, all of us as students, you always had your favorite teachers growing up, right? In your classes, those are the people you think of. They're the ones that certainly, inspired me to take up this as a career. But I never saw myself as always going to be a third grade teacher or an English teacher or a high school mathematics teacher. I always saw myself as someone who would wear a lot of hats. And I came from my parents are both, retired teachers. And so they were both coaches. And so in addition to being a teacher, I've been a head coach, I've served as an interim principal, I've all different kinds of committees. It's not even worth, talking about, because there's so many that when you're in this field, you just get involved. It's what you love. It's what you want to do. You want to have an impact on change, right? You want to be able to be a positive role model for those folks that are in your classes and even your teachers and colleagues around you that you had when you were a student. But to answer your question, it totally helps. I can walk into classrooms and staff have every right to feel how they want to feel, right? I never tell people you've got to do this, but this is probably the most talking I'll do, but I try to be a really good listener. So when I walk into classrooms and folks have an idea or they don't know where to go, and I'll even extend this to coaches. I have coaches in my district right now where I've had some questions come my way, athletic coaches that say, gosh, how about this software for recording a practice, or what can I do here or there? And so, my experience serving in that manner, I've walked in their shoes. I know as a teacher side, I know what it's like to prep an entire lesson and your students walk in and you're ready to go and something fails, right?
Yeah.
Something bombs, whether it's the technology that breaks. I know what it's like to have your principal walk in and they're going to evaluate you. And you've spent, all summer prepping for something, right? And the projector doesn't work. And so here I am sweating and whatnot. So, I definitely try to be a great listener. I try to let folks know that I certainly, I'm just a big believer in kind of working together, and it's okay to try and make a mistake. It's okay to just learn from those opportunities. And so that's what I rely on.
It's always amazing how these ed tech companies manage to build these hardware and software solutions that never, ever, ever break down until your principal comes by for a visit.
100%. Yeah. Talk about nervous moment, right? I mean,
oh, for sure.
You're
all this technology, it smells your fear as a teacher, right? If they know that you're afraid because your principal's coming in for an evaluation or something like that, that's when it knows it's time to break down. It's like how my printer, never prints when it knows I really need the document. That's when the printer is low on, blue ink or something.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good point. If I could sneak in a little bit here also, I mean, I also feel like my background in the classroom helps me in those front offices where our secretaries, our principals are at, our superintendent, our assistant soups, all those folks, they have jobs too. And so my role, they're part of my purview, so I've got to make sure, that they have what they need. But I guess as far as when things don't go well, the biggest thing that I can offer is, as a former educator, or I guess I still consider myself an educator, you've got to be able to punt. You've got to be able to be on your toes. So when that thing doesn't work out right, you've got plan B and plan C, and we'll go back to the drawing board and come back tomorrow and get it right.
Some of the people that I've spoken to in the past who work in roles similar to yours talk about how one of the bigger challenges of somebody in your role is trying to get teachers who maybe are not as interested in adopting new technology to get them more on board, right? Some of the teachers on a school campus love new technology and they're open to any solutions you're going to bring in. Some can be very, very reluctant. And for somebody in your role, you might know, hey, if I could get you to introduce this software solution, this hardware solution into your classroom, it's going to make you so much more effective. It's going to bring you to the next level. How do you help get those teachers that are reluctant to adopt technology to start looking into adopting technology?
Ryan, that's a great question. And I think that's something that you don't do by yourself. I'm surrounded by a bunch of great people throughout my career, super significantly better teachers than I ever was. Let's put it that way, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it takes a village. And so if I have folks that are struggling or want to try something new or are reluctant to try something new, I might find a colleague of theirs that is a stellar superstar or even just a steady Eddie in the building and use that as hey, tell me about what Nate's seeing in his classroom. What are you guys seeing in your math curriculum where Nate's getting hung up on here? Is there something here that we could, we've certainly deployed some new technology that with some features that probably give our staff the edge in a way. So it's those kinds of conversations that take place. So I guess, if I don't have a direct connection or some kind of, line of sight with that teacher, I know that our colleagues to the right and to the left of us provide a great resource. So that's kind of my short answer. I am a big believer in trying to collect data. I've got in our district, we've got a bunch of great techie teachers that are on the front line that it's a role that we rolled out a couple of years ago. And those folks, really have a kind of a direct line with me. And so I've picked their brains, I've stopped by their classroom. I've had meetings after school with them. We typically meet every quarter, kind of in a formal setting, but those informal times, those are huge. They'll come and say, hey, these Chromebooks, or hey, this projector, or hey, this idea I have. And usually they're pretty solid. And why is it solid? Because they're on the front line every day with their 35, students or 28 or whatever. And they know what works and what doesn't. And so I think it's my job to, certainly highlight some new technology. We've done some tech fairs. We landed on some new technology that we deployed a couple of years ago, and it was all based on a teacher tech fair. So when I say teacher tech fair, what I mean is we had a bunch of new technology in a space, and staff could come over on their planning time before school, after lunch, right? And try it out. And I was there for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I had folks say, yeah, I'm never going to use this. I had folks say, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Man, that's a really great idea for people in your role to have this tech fair where the teachers can come in and they can sample everything. And not only is that valuable for the teacher to be able to see everything laid out and they can start envisioning how they can use this in their classroom, but to your point that you just mentioned, that's valuable feedback for you. You get to get communication from those teachers saying, I think there's a fit here, or I will never use this. And then that's something that you can use for your work, or even go back and communicate to the vendors so that they know the kind of feedback you're getting from teachers. That's a really valuable activity that you do there. That's so cool. I think a lot of technology requires a lot of initial setup, right? You have some tech that's going to, require some significant staff hours to start implementing. But then you have the technology that's low barrier to entry, that's low hanging fruit, that's plug and play, and can do a lot of good for teachers without a lot of setup time. Can you give us some of your favorite examples that you're using right now of that low-hanging fruit technology? Things that you say to teachers, put this in your classroom, it's going to fit right in, it's not going to be a ton of setup, and it's going to save you hours a week in work, or it's going to create really cool learning experiences for your students.
That's a great point. What's something you can plug in straight away? I think, obviously it's something that's low-hanging fruit. It's something that they're going to use every day, right? It's something that they can touch. It's something they can explore. I mean, it's hard to find a school district that isn't some kind of Google these days. I mean, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, probably Microsoft Office really dominated the school front, or even there's some other products out there that I've forgotten, right? So, the Google suite is really where they're going to spend the bulk of their time. So I think back to the previous question. I definitely was relating to the teacher tech fair. Like any good teacher, that's just a stolen idea I heard from someone else and kind of remixed it for us. But, as a what I'm going to say as a washed up has-been classroom teacher, one of the things I appreciated with a Google Doc was I could give my students feedback, my English students feedback straight away, And so for me, that was something I had in my ecosystem every day, all the time. And I was able to see the value. You would often do some kind of peer review, right? Back in the day. And I mean, I know I probably got some years on you, but back in the day when I was a student, it was red pens, or you had a red pen, you peer reviewed your buddy, your partner's, paper. Well, your Google Doc is a great way to peer review. You can add comments, and so on and so forth. So for me, that's that kind of entry level. I don't know if there's anything that, maybe something in scheduling, I think there's something out there.
I think you nailed it, right? I can't think of anything more plug and play that I've used in my own work in teaching that doesn't have Google's brand on it in some way. That's fantastic. Before we close out, Nate, I want to give you a chance to shine the light on just some of the great work that you're doing over at your school district. Can you just highlight some of the tech initiatives that you're rolling out this year at Kearsley Community Schools?
So at Kearsley, it's been a real work in progress, right? So I really can't say I'm a new guy anymore. I'm starting my 4th year. I mean, can you say you're a new guy in 4 years in?
In this profession, I think you're a grizzled veteran at year 4.
Well, I appreciate that. So, Really when I got to the community, and first of all, let me say how lucky I am to have some outstanding folks around me every day, from teachers to maintenance folks to transportation to teachers to principals to, everyone I come across, they're putting kids first, and you see that every day. And so they inspire me to go out and get after it. But, when I took over the job about 3 short years ago, I recognized straight away that the teachers, the technology in their spaces just needed a lift, and so I would first, how it is, you take a job, your first 90 days on the job, you're just collecting data. So I'm out in buildings, I'm out talking with folks, I'm having one-on-one meetings with principals, and if I'm bumping into teachers in passing, I'm collecting informal and formal data at the same time. The first thing I noticed was the manner and how they were delivering their content, right? So I'm really lucky to have a blueprint that I came from that had a great infrastructure for technology, a great, some of my mentors around me knew how important having students having the best seat in the house was in their classrooms. And what I mean by that is I recognized that we had classrooms, and the bulk of them, most teachers either use a smart board in our field or a projector to display their content. And I noticed that in our ecosystem, teachers were delivering content on devices that were 10, 12 years old. Can you believe that?
Wow.
It was like washed out. It was a small screen. You got a class of 40 students, forget about it. It's really hard to see it. Teachers are turning off lights, and if you've ever been in the classroom and the lights go out, it's more of a managerial challenge for staff. Even if you're the greatest teacher out there, lights go out, it's hard to keep folks on task. So we made an upgrade. We went through and we took down chalkboards, right? Put up whiteboards. So right away, that's technology. That's a change in technology. If you can imagine my first year of being a teacher, I had chalkboards. That was 25 years ago.
Still had chalkboards. Wow.
Right. Still had chalkboards. And you had an amalgamation of whiteboards over chalkboards and screens over whiteboards and over chalkboards. So we had to just kind of start from square one. We pulled all those green chalkboards down, we put whiteboards up, and we added a projector. And this projector, I don't know if I'm name dropping here, but we really like the Epson 725 WI. That was through some feedback from our technology teacher fair. Mm-hmm. And so we went from, I think my data tells me, and this is off the top of my head, something like 55 inches was like the biggest, display. They were all kind of washed out. We went from that to about a 90 on average, maybe 100. So every student could have just the greatest seat in the room. And it's funny because, when we deployed all this stuff, I knew that we were on the right track when I walked around we had open houses, and I hit every building. I walked around, and 2/3, 3/4 of our classrooms, teachers were in there by themselves, and they had that projector, bright music playing. I mean, I could rattle off, different things they were showing, but right away I thought, okay, we're cooking with gas.
Man, that's exciting.
So.
It has been a pleasure to have been joined this week by Nate Moore, the Director of Technology at the Kearsley Community Schools in Flint, Michigan. Nate, before we let you go, we got one last question for you. And in light of all the great insight that you've given us during this interview, I'm particularly excited to get your answer to this last question. If with the snap of your fingers, you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
Well, Ryan, first of all, let me say again, I'm so glad to be here. It's been great to talk with you. This is a really difficult question. I'm sure I'm not the only guy that's paused on this one before. I think, I think when I think about education, I think staff need to find, time is always difficult. With your day, with your time to collaborate with each other, to collaborate across counties and districts, so you understand the best practices that are out there. But I think ultimately, I'd love to see budgeting just across the board. Everybody needs to have a lift, and so I think from just funding wise, so you don't get into a spot where you've got 10, 12-year-old projectors. You're in a spot where you've got lots of time and budgets that are on the rise, so that staff have the tools they need to deliver content to their students. You really can't, if you're working from chalkboards and whatnot, or really dated technology, it's really difficult to to get that content to those students in a way that is 21st century learning.
Nate, this has truly been a pleasure. Best of luck with the upcoming school year. Excited to see what you guys roll out.
Ryan, thank you so much. Glad to be on.
Thank you all for checking out Big Ideas in Education. We'll see you next week.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.